Welcome back once again to Retire.Army here with my co-host Victor, and we are doing another episode. We will be talking about being useful. Just want to let everybody know beforehand, if you want to find anything that we talk about, if you're watching on YouTube or any of the podcast channels, you can find that in the show notes. You can also catch us on Wreaths Across America Radio on Wednesdays at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's where we'll be having the show through them. Gracious kind of thing that they did for us to let us be on that show. So we appreciate that a whole lot and just want to let you know about where you can find us. And with all that, welcome back, Victor, and let's get into it.
It's great to be back, man.
And, trying to be useful. And I guess that's the topic we're going to discuss today. Just as a little kind of side note intro for it, myself being useful, just getting out there, beating the pavement. I know we spoke about it on the last episode, and finally going to be starting to do some things as a volunteer, as an intern with AFN here locally, which is awesome. But more importantly, giving back to the community and giving back to that organization, because they really they need a lot of help either way. And so I'm happy to be there and happy to learn and trying to be useful.
Awesome. And that's what it's about, huh? So you want to provide some kind of utility to the folks around you, to the community around you, because if not, really, what is the purpose, right? So you, especially like in the military, come from the military, you are part of a team, and everybody relies on that, right? There's a reliance on you doing your job, you being useful. So I completely understand where you're coming from, man, especially with like AFN, stuff like that. They always need somebody. So now you're the man. Now you're there to help them out.
I was really surprised, and it was just a matter of, again, just knocking on doors and out there beating the pavement and meeting people. Same with the thing that popped up over the weekend, and if you haven't seen it, it'll probably show up in the show somewhere at some point, the whole video. But another warrant friend of mine decided to start a live thing. He brought on 9 guests onto the show, and the first thing we talked about was transition and going from military to civilian and job stuff. But another way to be useful is just get out there and on other people's platforms, or get out there and help other people with their projects and learn a little bit along the way of what they're doing. Let them learn a little bit about you, and you build the rapport, and you build the trust, and you build momentum as well. So
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's how you get the word out too, right? Like AFN probably didn't know that they needed somebody until you knocked on their door, told them what you could provide them, how you can be useful to them, and it kind of opened their minds a little bit. Like, hey, yeah, we probably need a little bit of help in this area. So you were that light in their office that came up and just showed up, and now you're going to be providing something, some kind of product to them, some kind of utility to them. So I completely get it, man. I mean, as a parent, as a leader in the military, when I was in the military, I completely get that too. You're part of a team. You guide your family towards something, so you are, I hope I'm useful. I hope my family thinks I'm useful, because half the time my wife tells me otherwise, but yeah, that's how it is, man.
yeah. So we did want to discuss, we were talking about a couple episodes of a podcast, Tim Ferriss podcast. If you haven't checked it out, you should definitely go check it out. Tim's my man crush. And if Tim ever wants to reach out and do anything, like, I'll drop everything and do that. But he did have a guest on who recently released a book, and that was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we both checked out the podcast, and I've seen the other podcasts prior a couple of years ago as well. But Arnold is an interesting character. Basically self-immigrated to the United States around the age of 20 something. Went out to California. He did not go out there to do movie and TV, but he basically went out there to lay bricks, like put down bricks on the ground and do construction work. That turned into real estate. Real estate is where he started to build his fortune, and then from there moved on to film and TV with a ton of adversity in front of him. I mean, he wanted to be a big movie star, and basically the film industry said, look, people of your size, with your stature, with your accent, aren't in movies. And he was like, I don't care. I want to be in the movies. So
Yeah.
he lucked out and landed a role, and the rest is history from there. But just dipping into that story, and of course the book, and we'll put a link in the show note for the book if you want to check it out. But
Mhm.
let's just go over like the main thesis of that book, which is basically being useful. You want to talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'll up front, I've not gotten the book yet. I know it just got released. I have heard the podcasts, especially like on the Rich Roll podcast, and I've always been a fan of Arnold because he has overcome a lot of, adversities. He, like you mentioned, he came to this country. He immigrated to this country. It was basically an uphill battle, right? I mean, just about anybody who comes to this country and doesn't really speak the language or has an accent or doesn't have the education right up front. And I think I admire that about him. He basically he excelled in three different categories. That a lot of folks in this country who are born in this country um, only have hopes to excel in. Politics. He was an actor and he was a bodybuilder. So I admire him a lot for that. And just the premise of his book, be useful. I mean, what a better person, I couldn't think of a better person to talk about that. He has done so much and even have you seen his podcast? Have you heard his podcast? Like, I think it's like Pumping Iron, I think it is.
No.
Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I see that, and
So
then I see him on
yeah,
Snapchat once in a while as well, some other places.
yeah. So I'm not on Snapchat. I'm not to that level yet, but yeah, his podcast is awesome too. So it's like it just kind of goes over different parts of his book now lately, right? But one thing that really stood out to me, it was a quote that he had on the Rich Roll podcast, right? It was uh, about sleeping in. Basically, is well today I just need to sleep in, and he says BS. You don't need to sleep in. This country was not built on sleeping in. I mean, how profound is that, right? Like, right when I want to hit the snooze button, I get to thinking to myself, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to let this time go by? This is really useful time. The kids are asleep. Nobody's awake. This is prime time for me to get stuff done, right? Either writing, reading, doing something to be useful, right? Getting my plan for the day ready. This is prime time for me, right? Once the chaos starts, it's hard to get into that mindset and that momentum. So I think, I mean, I had to write that quote down, man, because I was like, this is on my little list of quotes right here on my iPhone. I got to look back on that every so often. Anytime I want to sleep in, I'm like, I can't do it, man. There's too much to be done. I need to either help my team out, help my family out, help myself out. Get notes going for the podcast, get things going for the green log book, whatever it might be. I need to be useful not only to myself but to the people around me.
Yeah, it's the times of the day that you mentioned in the morning, early in the morning, late at night is another time of
Oh
day
yeah.
where you can actually get some quiet time where people are just winding down. Some people go to sleep early. In the early
Hmm.
morning and the late evenings is where I get a lot of my mental work done. And
Yeah.
really, if you want to be useful to others and if you want to be helpful to others, if you want to love other people and want other people to love you, like you have to be able to do that first in order to get it
Oh yeah.
in return. And it's not like a transactional thing. It's more like this is what I'm putting out to the world and this is what the world is giving me back. So yeah, totally. The mornings are my favorite time of day. A quiet bathroom by myself is another one of those great
Yep.
places where you can just get a
That's
lot
a
of
good one.
thinking done. I actually learned that when I was deployed. I would go find, like in the desert, I would literally go find the porta potty as far away from everybody else as I
Yeah.
could. And
Yeah.
funny enough, there was one like in the middle of the desert, like you couldn't even see the buildings around. And I would just go out there and sit for, an hour and I would type on my phone and type up some notes and just
Yeah.
have a nice little quiet session with myself and think and, turn off the distractions. And yeah, it's perfect.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Amidst all the
Yeah.
chaos, you need to find time to yourself. You need to find a quiet time to, write, to read, to, you know, tap into your creative thinking. Think about how you're going to proceed with the next step in your life. I think that that is key, and that is what a lot of people don't or refrain or forget about doing. Right, taking time to themselves to actually, you know, think about these things or write something down. What their next step in life is going to be. Uh, yeah. I guess what else stood out to you in that podcast? Because I didn't hear the Tim Ferriss one, and I'm sure it was similar to like the Rich Roll one that I listened to. But any other quotes or anything else that stood out to you about it?
Yeah, really. I mean, so it's funny because Tim Ferriss and Rich Roll kind of, I won't say they have this battle, but they essentially, some of the people that they interview, they try to like, one of them puts it out first or the other one puts it out first, and
Hmm.
usually it's Tim puts it out first and then Rich puts it out like right
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
Same with like the Rick Rubin interview and a bunch of other interviews. But in that in that
Hmm.
podcast, I mean, so the first thing that really stood out to me is the fact that I guess he had just been going through some really tough medical issues, had a massive
Hmm.
surgery done, and he wasn't
Yeah.
sure if he was going to live. Like he almost died in the hospital. And so
Mm.
that in and of itself, after coming off of, a really hard political tour and term prior to that, and then just dealing with those physical ailments and things like that, and then the fact that he is still a bodybuilder. Like you see him in a lot of his videos on social media where he's just out there at Venice Beach or wherever just working out.
That's right.
To not be able to do that, and like that's your entire life, and to not be able to do that for just a
Hmm.
day is really kind of, it would destroy your ego for one, but it would destroy like your expectations of what things are and really make you kind of like want to rethink things. So the one thing I did notice for sure that stood out to me immediately was the interview that he did. He was literally sitting on his terrace. He had like, I think it was recording with a phone. It wasn't even a full frame shot. He didn't have a microphone.
Hmm.
And
Just what he
yeah,
had.
it was literally
Yeah.
just him sitting on the porch or
Yeah.
on the terrace with his phone. I think his dog was there at some point. Maybe one of the other animals running around. He's got a few animals running around his house, but it
Hmm.
was just really raw, and it was really personal. It felt like a one-on-one call with him. And he did mention something in there that I liked, which was how he grew up, and something that most people may or may not know, that his dad was really hard on him. Like his father was really hard on him and his brother both. His father was a police officer there where they grew up in Austria, I guess. And he was just really tough on him. And for whatever reason, Arnold was the one who had the shoulders that could carry the burden and deal with it. And he said that that actually propelled him and drove him. Like that was kind of his fuel. And he said for his brother, on the other hand, his brother it really destroyed him over time. And there were a couple times when his brother like ran away from home, and then later on in his life, he turned to alcohol and became addicted to alcohol. And he
Hmm.
died actually fairly young. So he's already passed away. But that was one of the things that stood out to me really interesting, was the fact that how two guys in the same household growing up under the same roof with the same father absorbed the energy that the father was giving them, right? One took it and used it as fuel, the other
That's
one
right.
took it and it kind of just like destroyed his willpower and destroyed
Yeah.
his effort that he put out. So that really stood out to me, and I think, I won't say it's something that you can actively control, but I think it's something you can
Hmm.
definitely recognize and potentially change the course of where that energy is going and how it's being absorbed.
Yeah. So I'm here. Just I was looking up some of that kind of feedback from the book. So again, I have not read that book yet. It's on my list to do. Of things to get. I might bypass the Audible one only because I'm like I have too much on on my mind right now. I can't just do the audible one all the time.
Yeah.
I have to have like a tangible, like a book to read in my hand. Uh, but it got me thinking too when I started hearing his podcast. Like, how many times have I heard that as a kid? Like my parents when I'm doing something silly or when I'm just sitting around the house. Hey, do something, be useful. Be useful, and I think that that comes from a mindset of somebody who again has come to the United States in search of something more, and you can't just sit around and you wait for things. You can't just sit around and do nothing. Because nobody. We've heard it time and time again. I mean, there's memes about this. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to give you anything, right? And when opportunity knocks for you, nobody's going. I mean, you either take action or you don't. Um, just yesterday, I was at this author's signing, and I met this lady there who we just got to talking, and she had mentioned to me like, "Hey, when opportunity knocks, or when one door closes, go through the window." And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense, right? You got to figure a way to do things. And I've been lectured by my father, who has also immigrated to this country, right? And I think it's that mindset of, you have to provide something, not only for yourself, but you have to provide something for your family. You have to you have to do something. You can't just sit there. And a lot of today's world is people just kind of sitting back and just waiting. At least that's what I see and that's what I hear. I have younger children, one in college, one in middle school, and so on. And that's what I hear. People are just kind of standing by, waiting. And what do you do then? What's the next step that you take? And sometimes there is no step, and that's where we get folks who are just kind of living in their parents' house until they're 30, 40 even, So it's a little crazy, man. But there was just that title, man. It just tells me so much. Without even hearing his podcast, it made me want to go out and just get it, because that's something that I was told as a kid. I'm like, okay, well, I want to hear what this guy has to say because he's lived multiple lives, and it kind of resonates with me.
Yeah. And he definitely was on the proactive side. And I think that's what really makes the difference between accomplishing things and not accomplishing things. Like, you can be told a million different ways how to be a failure, right? There's a million different ways to be a failure, but the only way to be a success is to actually accomplish what you set out to do, right? And
That's right.
look,
That's right.
we all deal with setbacks. I've been dealing with setbacks a lot lately, and of course, over my life, and everybody has. Like, we all have our own problems and issues. Like, there's the surface level of what everybody sees, and then there's below the surface of what everybody doesn't see, which is your personal struggles, your mother having breast cancer, like all these different things that happen in life that not a lot of people know about because they only get what they get.
Yeah.
So the
That's
next
right.
the next logical step, like, that's why it's important to set up things like routines and habits, and just even the simple stuff. Even, who is it, General McGraven, I guess, or Admiral McGraven, and that book about making your bed, or maybe it was a quote from a speech that he gave, but I think he created a book out of it. But it was literally like, the first thing you do in the morning when you get out of bed is make your bed, and that sets the tone for the rest of the day, because you've already succeeded at
Oh,
doing
absolutely.
the thing that you set out to do, and then everything else after that is just whatever comes after that, right? So kind of looking at it from that
That's
perspective
right.
of setting up these simple habits and these simple little tasks, like brushing your teeth. Everybody, it's a mundane
Yeah.
thing. Everybody brushes their teeth. You get up in the morning before you go to bed, sometimes after lunch, but you don't happen to sit down and think of it as a success or a win in the day. Like, nobody sits and thinks like, oh yeah, I brushed my teeth. Yes. Like, but literally that's how
Yeah, we
you,
don't see it that way.
no, but you got to frame it that way, right? I mean, you have to frame things like that and take
Yeah.
into account the little things, so that you can then understand, okay, well, I've done these 7 things that I told myself that I have to do every single day. The next logical step is, what can I actually do? Like, do I actually have
Yeah.
do I actually have any kind of push or pull on the outcome of what I'm trying to do? Or can I just go the next step
Hmm.
and take the next step and knock on the next door and make the next phone call, send the next email, right?
Yeah, it definitely is the little things that build up to the bigger thing. And I know the book you're talking about. I have it right there on my bookshelf, and I've tried time and time again to make my kids read it. And they, I got a 13-year-old, and I talked to him about it, and how, especially the lessons you learn in the book, just like you mentioned, that is your first win of the day. Why not start the day with a
Right.
win, right? It makes you feel good. It sets the tone for the rest of the day. And I present the book to him. Maybe I didn't do a good job in presenting it because he's like, "Dad, really? You got a book about making my bed?" I'm like, "No, no, dude. It's not about that. It's about, setting the tone for the rest for everything that you
Right.
do." He has yet to read it. It's still sitting on the bookshelf, right? But it's true, man. It's little things build up to the bigger thing. It's not a lot of folks look for the ultimate win right off the bat, right? Oh, okay. Well, what about the steps leading to that, right? We can't make it to the top right off the
Right.
bat. You got to have these little things that work up to that big thing. It's called goal setting. It's called milestones. And a lot of folks, that's how when they fail, I think when they fail, they fail miserably,
Right.
right? And they just let things kind of deteriorate because they tried to shoot too high and didn't do all the work, the legwork to get up there. At least that's what I've seen, like when I'm talking to like my Marines or my kids and they didn't make something, like maybe they didn't make the next rank, maybe they didn't get selected or whatever it is for the following rank. I'd sit down with them and ask them, let's analyze this. What didn't you do and what did you do? Oh, I never got my photo take, my updated photo, or I had a date gap in my fitness report, or whatever the deal might be, right? There's something in there that is hindering them from making that next step. And they just never took the time to analyze it, right? And then never took the time to fix that and take that next step appropriately so they can hit that higher step and get selected for promotion or whatever, build this project or whatever it might be. So those little things matter. They really do. I'm a big fan of writing things down like that. Like, hey, here's my ultimate goal. Now let's back it up. Folks ask me, how did you get this stuff done? Well, I figure out where I want to be, and then I kind of back it up a little bit and just set little goals here and there.
Yeah.
Here in 3 weeks, I want to do this. Here next month, I want to do this. I want to be able to say that I completed this before I get to the next step. So I think a lot of folks don't do that. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way because I was one of those guys who would reach for the highest level. And I'm like, damn, why can't I make it? Well, because I'm not doing the appropriate steps to get there. I'm just trying to, you can't jump from the bottom step. Like literally, you can't jump from the bottom step to the top and skip all these other ones, so it's just, it's a thing that I think we need to keep in mind. Anybody out there who's trying to goal set, and they can't make it, there's a process to this.
Yeah, and I'll say one final thing, and then we could probably wrap it after that. Is
Yeah,
along those same
sure.
lines, what Arnold did when he was trying to get away from the house when he was 17,
Mhm.
18. One of the things that he mentions in the book and one of the things that he mentions in the podcast is like setting your goals way beyond what you expect to happen. So he was like, I want to
Yeah.
be the world champion weightlifter, bodybuilder guy. He's like,
Hmm.
that's what I want to be. He's like, and the thing that made the difference between him and everybody else he was competing with was everybody else was competing to be first at that competition or first locally. He set his goal to be
Yeah.
first on the global scale, on the world scale.
Right.
And so that he basically says it in this way. He's like, that's really the only difference is we both came to the same event with the same amount of training, with the same amount of effort. But my
Hmm.
goal was way beyond the scope of the actual event we were at, and they were still living within the scope of the event. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not shoot as high as you can? Right. That makes perfect sense to me. Like, why limit yourself? And people do that. I mean, shoot, I do that. And a lot of things I do. But why not just, hey, I want to be the top, New York Times bestselling author. Okay, well, cool goal. How do we get
Right.
there? You know?
And then you have to do the work.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, exactly. Do the work, man. Do the dirty work. No, people don't like to get their hands
No.
dirty. I love that. Hey, get your hands dirty because we got soap and water right there.
Right.
You can always wash them.
That's right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
good stuff, man.
Cool, man. Well, so we don't waste the internet, we'll let everybody get back to their work week or get back to their household chores or whatever they're doing right now. But thanks again for listening in. Everything is going to be time stamped. All the things that we talked about are going to be in the show notes. If you want to check out Arnold's new book, it just dropped yesterday. It's on Audible and also on Kindle, I believe. And I think you can get the hard copy either now or maybe within a week or so. So you can check that out. If you check out Tim Ferriss's podcast, it's the best podcast on the planet, in my humble opinion. And one that I strive to be like. I want to beat Tim Ferriss one day in the realm of military retirement and transition. So that's what we're pushing for here.
There you go.
And you can check us out anywhere on the internet: YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, all them places, Spotify, as well as Wreaths Across America on Wednesdays at 11 p.m. You can find them on iHeartRadio and a couple other places on the internet as well. And until then, we will see you all later and talk to you soon. Thank you for being here.